Star Wars wasn't meant to work. It was a gamble with broken props, chaotic weather, and a studio that didn't believe in it. Stormtroopers fainted in armor. Costumes fell apart. Tunisia drowned in rain. Half the crew thought it was a kids' movie doomed to flop. But out of accidents and panic came the most influential film of the century. Here are 20 wild facts about Star Wars: A New Hope, proof that cinema's biggest legend was stitched together from chaos. Fact 1. Tatooine's debut was drowned in rain. George Lucas scouted Tunisia to represent Tatooine, picturing endless, sun-bleached deserts. In March 1976, cameras rolled on the very first day of production, and disaster struck. The region experienced its heaviest rainstorm in 50 years. Roads washed out, vehicles sank in mud, and sets collapsed underwater. Costumes soaked through, sand clung to gear, and stormtrooper armor rusted overnight. The crew, many already skeptical of Lucas's space fantasy, openly mocked the chaos. Some whispered the movie was cursed. With money bleeding away, Lucas fought to keep shooting, salvaging hours of ruined schedules. Ironically, the storm lent an eerie realism to the desert scenes. When skies cleared, the muddy wasteland looked harsher and more authentic than planned. What started with drowned equipment and broken morale became the first glimpse of a galaxy far, far away. Fact 2. The Death Star trench was a mistake. The Death Star was intended as a flawless sphere. At Industrial Light and Magic, technicians pieced together the massive fiberglass model in 1976, but the two halves wouldn't align. A deep groove circled the equator, making the model look defective. Rebuilding was impossible with deadlines looming. Instead, George Lucas rewrote the flaw into the story. The groove became a service trench, transformed into the Rebels' desperate attack corridor. Special effects artists doubled down, rigging miniature ships, motion control cameras, and explosions into the gap. What began as a costly accident became the heart of the finale. Luke's trench run, Obi-Wan's ghostly guidance, and Han's last-second rescue all played out in a space that wasn't supposed to exist. Without that model-making failure, Star Wars might have ended with a bland firefight. Instead, cinema gained one of its most thrilling sequences. Fact 3. The Yavin Briefing hid early CGI. In 1977, computer graphics were still locked in research labs. Yet Star Wars smuggled one of the first real-time CGI animations into theaters. During the Rebel briefing on Yavin, pilots study a rotating wireframe of the Death Star. The model wasn't hand-drawn. It was built by programmers at the University of Illinois using experimental digital visualization. For audiences, the spinning grid felt futuristic, unlike anything in film at the time. For the industry, it was a proof of concept. Computers could create cinematic images, not just scientific displays. The sequence lasted only seconds, but it planted seeds that grew into Tron, Jurassic Park, and the CGI revolution of the 1990s. Lucas, who struggled for years with practical effects, had unknowingly previewed the future. A simple wireframe ball quietly marked the beginning of Hollywood's digital age. Fact 4. Episode 4 didn't exist in 1977. When audiences lined up in May 1977, the title crawl said only Star Wars. No episode number, no A New Hope. At the time, George Lucas envisioned a self-contained adventure, not a sprawling saga. But the movie's runaway success changed everything. As sequels took shape, Lucas rebranded the original film in 1981 as Episode 4, A New Hope. His decision confused audiences. How could this be Part 4 if no other chapters existed? But the move reframed the story as one piece of a grand mythology, creating the illusion of untold history and unseen futures. That single label transformed Star Wars from a one-off blockbuster into a serialized universe decades before Marvel copied the model. What started as a gamble for one summer became the blueprint for modern cinematic franchising. Fact 5. Jabba the Hutt was shot, then buried. Lucas originally filmed a scene between Han Solo and Jabba the Hutt at Mos Eisley. With no money for a creature, Jabba was played by actor Declan Mulholland, a burly man in a furry vest. The footage looked awkward. Harrison Ford circled him clumsily, and the pacing dragged. Lucas cut the scene, leaving Jabba as a mysterious off-screen crime lord. For years, the deleted sequence became legend among fans, whispered about but unseen. In 1997, Lucas digitally revived it for the special edition, replacing Mulholland with a CGI slug-like Jabba. The effect was clunky, and critics panned it, but the restored footage confirmed the myth. Ironically, budget limitations had forced a cut that originally improved the film. Sometimes, what's left unseen becomes more powerful than what makes the screen. Fact 6. Red Leader's final role was bittersweet. Drew Henley played Garvin Dryce, call sign Red Leader, the veteran pilot leading the rebel attack on the Death Star. Few realized it would be his final screen role. Henley had built a modest career in British television and film but struggled privately with bipolar disorder. Shortly after completing Star Wars, he retired from acting, vanishing from the industry entirely. For decades, his brief performance was all fans saw. Then, in the 1997 special edition, unused footage of Red Leader was restored, bringing Henley back into the saga years after he left the screen. Tragically, his name was even misspelled in the credits. What should have been a small honor became a bittersweet farewell. Today, Red Leader stands as a symbol of sacrifice in the story, and of an actor's quiet, final contribution to cinema history. Fact 7. The bantha was really an elephant. When Star Wars needed a massive desert beast, Lucas couldn't afford animatronics or complex effects. The solution was Margie, a trained Asian elephant. In California's Death Valley, handlers dressed her in heavy layers of shaggy costume fur and strapped on a fake tail. Temperatures soared, and the disguise made her miserable. She constantly shook off the headpiece, dragged the tail through sand, and ignored cues, forcing retakes. The crew struggled to keep her in frame, improvising around her movements. Despite the chaos, they captured enough usable shots to sell the illusion of banthas roaming Tatooine. Off-camera, Margie returned to Marine World, but her stubborn, overheated performance became immortalized as part of Star Wars lore. A single elephant, disguised under sweat and fake fur, gave life to one of the galaxy's most memorable creatures. Fact 8. George Lucas insisted on keeping the elephant. Bantha. By the 1990s, Lucas was overhauling Star Wars with digital technology. Creatures were updated, backgrounds extended, and effects polished. But when it came to the banthas, Lucas refused to replace them with CGI. His reason was loyalty. He had grown fond of Margie the elephant during the 1976 shoot. Despite the production headaches she caused, Lucas believed her performance carried an authenticity no computer could replicate. The decision stood out because nearly everything else in the special edition was digitally altered. Fans later praised this restraint, noting how the original bantha footage preserved a tactile realism missing in some CGI-heavy edits. Thanks to Lucas's sentimental choice, Margie's sweat-soaked struggles in a heavy costume remain locked into Star Wars history, proving that sometimes the best special effects come from stubborn authenticity. Fact 9. R2-D2 accidentally rolled onto another movie. Filming in Tunisia wasn't just chaotic for Star Wars. Nearby, Franco Zeffirelli was shooting his biblical epic Jesus of Nazareth. During one break in 1976, R2-D2's remote controls malfunctioned. The droid rolled away from its handlers, trundling off the Star Wars set and straight into Zeffirelli's production. For a brief moment, extras in robes meant to represent ancient Judea watched in confusion as a shiny sci-fi robot wheeled into their desert. Crew members scrambled to drag R2 back before he made it into the background of another movie entirely. The bizarre crossover never made film, but it became a behind-the-scenes legend. A surreal moment when a galaxy far, far away collided with biblical cinema on the same dusty stretch of Tunisia. Fact 10. Carrie Fisher's no bra rule. George Lucas gave Carrie Fisher one of the strangest costuming directives in Hollywood history. Leia Organa would not wear a bra. His explanation was that in space, bras don't exist, claiming zero gravity would make them unnecessary. Fisher complied but hated the decision. The thin white gown left her uncomfortable on set, and she later joked publicly about the absurdity of Lucas's reasoning. The no bra rule became infamous, part of Fisher's larger story as an actress who pushed back against the industry's odd demands. While Leia's gown became iconic, the detail behind it exposed Lucas's peculiar approach to logic in costume design. Fisher's wit turned the rule into a running joke, ensuring that even one of the saga's most serious heroines carried a touch of absurd trivia in her wardrobe. Fact 11. The blooper reel showed chaos on set. The finished Star Wars looked polished, but the raw footage told another story. A blooper reel compiled by crew members showed constant mishaps. Anthony Daniels tripped repeatedly in the restrictive C-3PO suit, sometimes falling so hard he needed help to stand. Stormtroopers banged into doors and props, their armor clattering apart. During desert shoots, Luke's landspeeder caught fire, sending the crew scrambling with extinguishers. Even Alec Guinness, a veteran actor, was caught laughing in frustration when Chewbacca's furry arm blocked his face mid-scene. None of these errors survived the edit, but the reel circulated years later, proving how messy the production really was. For fans, it was proof that even the most groundbreaking sci-fi was built on constant accidents, missed cues, and exhausted actors fumbling through chaos. Fact 12. Han shot. First in the script. In the Mos Eisley Cantina, Han Solo faces Greedo in one of cinema's most debated moments. The 1976 shooting script leaves no doubt. Han shoots Greedo without warning, then coolly leaves the bar. That ruthless action defined Han as an unpredictable rogue, a mercenary who valued survival over honor. But in 1997, Lucas altered the scene for the special edition, adding a shot of Greedo firing first and missing. Fans saw it as watering down Han's edge. Outrage spread so far that "Han shot first" became a slogan printed on shirts, buttons, and signs at conventions. Cast members like Harrison Ford avoided fueling the debate, but the original intent is clear in drafts and early cuts. What began as a single-frame edit became one of cinema's longest-running fan wars over creative authenticity. Fact 13. The opening crawl was brutally cut. George Lucas's first draft of the opening crawl was nearly impossible to read. 6 paragraphs of dense political backstory scrolled across the screen, full of names and jargon. Test audiences found it boring and confusing. Editors insisted it be trimmed. Under pressure, Lucas slashed the text down to about 70 words, crafting the lean, poetic crawl we know today. The cut transformed a slow lecture into an instantly iconic opening, pulling viewers straight into action without drowning them in lore. Paired with John Williams' score, the crawl became one of the most recognizable introductions in film. Ironically, it was brutal editing, not writing, that made it legendary. What could have been the dullest start to a space opera became an unforgettable gateway into a galaxy far, far away. Fact 14. Luke's speeder was movie magic. Luke's land speeder looked futuristic, gliding smoothly over desert flats. In reality, it sat on hidden wheels. To sell the illusion, the effects team improvised. They mounted mirrors along the sides to reflect sand, smearing Vaseline directly onto the camera lens to blur the reflections. Careful framing and selective angles concealed the tires. It was crude but effective, fooling audiences worldwide. With no budget for advanced effects, the crew relied on tricks borrowed from old-school stagecraft. The result was a convincing speeder chase built from grease and glass. That ingenuity gave the Star Wars universe its sense of tangible realism. Fans believed Luke really owned a hovering craft, never realizing the effect cost almost nothing. In the end, low-tech wizardry did what CGI couldn't yet achieve, making fantasy feel real. Fact 15. CGI debuted in the Rebel briefing. Long before digital effects dominated Hollywood, Star Wars quietly introduced them. During the Rebel briefing, a rotating wireframe model of the Death Star is displayed on a screen. It wasn't hand-drawn animation, but one of the first uses of computer-generated imagery in a feature film. Created by programmers at the University of Illinois, the wireframe was generated using experimental technology that few outside academia had seen. For audiences in 1977, it felt futuristic, a glimpse into advanced military tech within the story. For filmmakers, it foreshadowed a revolution. That tiny sequence planted the idea that computers could build cinematic illusions. From there, CGI would evolve into the backbone of modern blockbusters. The wireframe Death Star may look simple today, but it marked a historic turning point in visual effects. Fact 16. Stormtrooper head smash stays in. One of the most famous bloopers in Star Wars wasn't cut, it was immortalized. During a scene aboard the Death Star, a stormtrooper accidentally bangs his helmet on a low doorway as he enters frame. The clumsy stumble made it into the theatrical release because George Lucas was rushing deadlines and saw no reason to reshoot. Fans eventually spotted it, turning the mistake into one of the saga's funniest Easter eggs. Instead of being embarrassed, Lucas leaned into it. In later editions, he added an audible clunk sound effect to highlight the blunder, transforming an accident into intentional comedy. What began as an anonymous extra's painful misstep became a legend, proving even the most polished space epic was stitched together with real human mistakes. Today, it's one of the most beloved slip-ups in cinema history. Fact 17. Episode 4 became the saga blueprint. In 1981, Lucas retroactively retitled Star Wars as Episode 4, A New Hope. It was a bold gamble. At the time, audiences only knew one film, and adding Episode 4 implied a sprawling unseen mythology. Some were confused, others intrigued. For Lucas, it reframed the movie as a single chapter in a much larger story, leaving room for prequels, sequels, and spin-offs. This numbering system created the illusion of depth and history, giving Star Wars its mythic feel. Later, when the prequels arrived, the numbering justified the saga's non-linear storytelling. Without that change, Star Wars might have stayed a standalone adventure. Instead, it became the foundation for modern franchising, showing Hollywood how to build universes rather than isolated films. That simple Roman numeral transformed cinema's biggest gamble into a never-ending saga. Fact 18. An elephant shaped the AT-AT walkers. Margie the elephant, the same animal used to play a bantha in A New Hope, left another unlikely mark on the saga. When animators designed the AT-AT walkers for The Empire Strikes Back, they studied Margie's gait at Marine World. Her slow, swaying steps and heavy weight distribution became the template for the stop-motion machines. The result was uncanny. The mechanical walkers felt massive and realistic, not like stiff puppets. Audiences marveled at their lumbering menace, unaware the inspiration came from a tired elephant who once trudged through a fur costume in Death Valley. A single animal's movements bridged two of Star Wars' most iconic visuals, proving that even the saga's futuristic war machines were born from simple, grounded observation. Low-tech inspiration became the secret behind high-tech spectacle. Fact 19. The crawl borrowed from old Hollywood. The opening crawl may feel futuristic, but its roots came from old Hollywood serials. Lucas openly admitted borrowing the angled text scroll from 1930s Flash Gordon adventures. To give it weight, he worked with graphic artist Susie Rice, who designed the bold typeface after Nazi propaganda fonts to evoke authoritarian power. Combined with John Williams' triumphant music, the crawl set the tone instantly: epic, urgent, mythic. The irony is that what seemed cutting-edge in 1977 was actually a collage of retro influences repurposed with modern technology. By recycling cinematic history, Lucas gave Star Wars both nostalgia and novelty. It became so iconic that the crawl itself is now parodied endlessly, from cartoons to commercials. What began as a borrowed device transformed into one of the most recognizable openings in film history. Fact 20. Flash Gordon inspired the Death Star's blast. George Lucas had long dreamed of adapting Flash Gordon, but couldn't secure the rights. Instead, he created his own universe, borrowing heavily from the pulp serials of the 1930s. One of the clearest homages is the Death Star's planet-destroying beam. The pulsing red lines, exaggerated buildup, and explosive finale were designed to echo Flash Gordon's ray gun effects. What could have felt silly was elevated by cutting-edge model work, sound design, and John Williams' score. The homage wasn't hidden. Lucas wanted audiences to feel the thrill of old matinee sci-fi, but on a grander scale. By fusing childhood nostalgia with modern filmmaking, he turned a borrowed serial gimmick into one of cinema's most terrifying weapons. The Death Star's blast wasn't just destruction, it was Lucas paying tribute to the pulp that inspired him. Star Wars wasn't perfect, it was chaos. Rainstorms drowned deserts, models broke, costumes failed, actors clashed, edits divided fans, and accidents rewrote history. Yet every disaster carved the movie into legend. A groove in a model became the trench run. An elephant's stubborn steps inspired AT-ATs. A deleted gangster scene shaped Han Solo's mystique. It should have collapsed under its own weight. Instead, it became the foundation of modern cinema. And that's the real force behind Star Wars, a galaxy born from accidents, stubbornness, and pure luck.
Hit subscribe, because we're just getting started with the madness behind your favorite films.